I'm sure that over the past few days, right in the middle of Easter week, you've all seen this headline.
Donald Trump will abandon Ukraine peace talks in days without progress, warns Rubio.
Peace talks in Ukraine aren't going the way the White House hoped, and now they're threatening to walk away from it all. Marco Rubio is now saying that unless there's clear progress, they're done with it. They'll wash their hands of the whole thing and move on to other priorities. He's been very clear about it.
We're going to get the conflict stopped, but if for some reason one of the two parties makes it very difficult, we're just going to say, you're foolish. We're going to just take a pass.
And yes, this could be a way to pressure the Ukrainians and the Europeans into accepting whatever deal Washington puts on the table. Something like, this is it, or you're on your own. Sure, that might be part of it. Maybe it's a final attempt to speed up any agreement, to push the sides into not aiming for a better deal, but just accepting what's there. And that's definitely what the Trump camp will say. But come on, we can't just close our eyes. The problem is, despite all the concessions made by the Trump administration, the Kremlin hasn't shown a single sign of goodwill. During the campaign, the current US president claimed it would take him just 24 hours to stop the fighting because, after all, Putin respected him. Then, of course, he extended that to 100 days, and that window is about to close. So what's happening? Even the US ambassador to Ukraine has decided to resign over how badly things are going, because the plan just isn't working. And the big question is, why on earth doesn't Putin seem eager to end a war that's costing Russia so much blood and money? We're talking about around 700,000 casualties and hundreds of billions of dollars. And now that Trump has basically given him everything, isn't it enough? Think about it. But first, let's talk a bit about AI. Nowadays, generative AI is like the internet in the late 90s. It's completely restructuring the economy and transforming the value proposition of human work. AI skills aren't just a trend anymore, they're a necessity. Learning how to effectively use AI tools makes you more valuable as an individual, future-proofing your career and giving you a competitive edge to outperform job applicants, colleagues, and businesses. That's why we at VisualPolitik recommend Growth School's 3-hour hands-on AI training. Trust me, it's a game changer. It teaches you skills that will help you streamline workflows, boost productivity, and save time in any business or profession. You get practical training on over 25 AI tools, exclusive strategies, and hacks that can help you increase productivity and stand out. And it's not just for tech folks, but also for non-tech folks in sales, marketing, HR, academic studies, business owners, or even those working in finance. And here's the best part. Normally, it's paid training, but it's exclusively free for the first 1,000 VisualPolitik viewers who will join using the link below. Yes, absolutely for free. Register now. The link is in the description. And that's not all. Those who register will also receive a free $500 bonus worth of extra resources. It covers everything from job hunting strategies and salary negotiation techniques to mastering Excel and creating content. Growth School has helped over 1 million people upskill across the globe, and this is your chance to join that top 1% in an AI-first world. So click the link in the description and secure your free spot to learn those skills that will secure your future. Don't forget to join Growth School's WhatsApp group for regular important updates. And now, back to our topic. Trump has already told him Ukraine won't join NATO, that the territories Russia took by force will remain Russian, that sanctions might soon be lifted, that US troops in Europe would be scaled down, and even hinted that Putin would be welcome in Washington. I mean, come on. The US president has even blamed Biden and Zelensky for the war and has no problem attacking them repeatedly. And don't tell me that humiliating Zelensky in the Oval Office and publicly accusing him of being a tyrant wasn't a gift for Russian propaganda. They must have been rubbing their hands in delight. On top of that, Trump's envoy Stephen Witkoff couldn't be more on board with it all. And let's not forget, both partial ceasefires agreed to, so far, have overwhelmingly benefited Russia. We've said it before, Trump has become something like Vladimir Putin's personal Santa Claus. Don't doubt it. Headlines like this one are pure gold for the Kremlin.
Donald Trump again blames Ukraine for starting war with Russia.
Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and then hope that people give you some missiles.
So, it was Zelensky and Ukraine who started the war, huh, Donald? Unbelievable. What a nerve. What a way to negotiate. Here's the thing, in many ways, this could already be seen by Moscow as a major victory, a huge political win, a narrative triumph, and for their media mouthpieces, even a military success. Now Putin could present it to the whole of Russia like this. We did it! NATO has surrendered to our demands. Ukraine will never join that treacherous alliance. On top of that, we've made Russia bigger. Now we're respected. We set the rules. We made history, he could say. After all, it's not Putin's blood that's been spilled. And honestly, what better proof of how much of a victory this would be than the fact that even a government like Poland's is calling Trump's concessions nothing short of a historic mistake.
Poland warns Donald Trump against historical mistake over Russian expansion.
So let me insist on the question we asked earlier. What the hell is the Russian autocrat waiting for? Why not make peace now? Why not at least show a gesture of goodwill to a White House that has done nothing but hand him gift after gift over the last few months? It doesn't seem to make any sense. And yet, here we are. Vladimir Putin hasn't made a single concession. Even Trump has had to admit it.
Russia has to get moving. Too many people are dying, thousands a week, in a terrible and senseless war.
But still, nothing. Moscow has discredited Washington's efforts, first by repeatedly rejecting any ceasefire offer, and then by launching strikes against civilians right in the middle of Easter. And the question is, why? Wasn't Trump the one who claimed Putin was a man of peace? Well, as always with the Kremlin, none of this is random. Moscow has its reasons. Starting with the fact that they likely have no real interest in signing peace with Ukraine. Why would they? They don't need it. Or at least they're not in a rush. And this is what we need to understand. It's something Trump was warned about a long time ago. And leaders like Kaja Kallas keep repeating. Russia doesn't want peace in Ukraine. Russia wants to wipe Ukraine off the map. As simple and brutal as that. But let's be clear, this isn't just about emotions, it's a completely rational calculation. There are three major reasons why Putin is in no hurry to end this war. We've already talked about this here at VisualPolitik. Since the invasion began more than 3 years ago, Russia's economy has been adapting to wartime conditions. Today, its military industry is running full throttle. The result, maybe not general prosperity, but definitely jobs and a sense of economic momentum. Right now, military spending is by far the largest item in the Russian federal budget. Some analysts estimate it could represent over 40% of total government spending. That's insane. And the thing is, this spending is very labor intensive, especially in an economy historically focused on oil and gas, capital-heavy sectors with few jobs and low wages. Now, thanks to this massive Keynesian-style spending push, the war effort is keeping a lot of people employed, including soldiers themselves. You could say that right now, many young Russians are mobilized, earning relatively good wages by Russian standards. And for the first time in ages, the weapons factories are running at full capacity. In fact, this has become so central that even if a war were to end suddenly, the military effort likely wouldn't. Quite the opposite. Based on what we're hearing, the Kremlin might believe that they can't afford to shut it down. That ending this wartime economy would mean factory closures, job cuts, mass unemployment, the works. Put simply, in the Kremlin, there's a real fear that peace itself could trigger an economic crisis. Now, technically speaking, that's not true. Contrary to the narrative, this war economy is not creating real prosperity in Russia. The government is burning through its hydrocarbon revenues to pay for low productivity jobs. It's short-term survival at the cost of long-term collapse. But none of that matters. What matters to the Kremlin is that people have adapted, that there is a sense of stability because there are jobs. Sure, lifting sanctions would be a good thing, but tyrants like Putin fear one thing above all, taking the wrong step. If things seem to be working in Russia today, why shake things up? Transitions are messy, so why close factories? Why stop paying young military workers? Why deflate the bubble of this new, stronger Russia? No, according to this logic, there's no need to change course. In fact, Putin is doing the opposite. He's increasing military spending, including pay for the armed forces. So the end result is that this more militarized Russia isn't just a temporary phase, it's a model built to last. And what does that mean? That from an economic, or better said, a utilitarian's perspective, Putin is in no rush to end the war. Because right now, problems like inflation, shortages, or sky-high interest rates all have a convenient scapegoat, the war. But if the war ends, who does the public blame? So no, Putin isn't in a hurry, at least not from an economic standpoint. And you know what? Politically speaking, he isn't either. Vladimir Putin wants to go down in history as a true czar. More than anything, he wants to consolidate his grip on power. He wants it, and so does everyone in his inner circle. And you know what? Being at odds with the West is the perfect way to legitimize that power. We've been saying it for years. Putin isn't selling prosperity. His promise is different. For years, he's been telling the Russian people that, thanks to him, Russia will be great again, that it will be strong and powerful once more, and that it will regain the respect it deserves, that traditional values will be preserved in contrast to the moral decay of the rest of the world. That's how Putin justifies his regime. And despite all the suffering this war has caused, it fits his agenda perfectly, because now Russians can start to smell victory. At least that's how the propaganda spins it. For example, the Kremlin is constantly handing out medals and rewards to professional soldiers, while state TV glorifies the exploits of ordinary people defending the motherland. And as we mentioned before, Trump's arrival has been a blessing for the narrative. This is no longer just the war in Ukraine. It's Putin's Great War. Russia's war, and he's not going to end it just because Trump has walked into the White House and asked him to. In fact, many in Washington are making a huge mistake. Putin doesn't need peace. He needs a clear, decisive victory. He needs it to look like Ukraine is surrendering. He needs more concessions. And that's the problem, because Moscow's demands have now gone way beyond anything acceptable. Now think about it. What does Putin have to lose by prolonging the war? VisualPolitik community, I'm speaking to you from Estonia, a country that knows all too well how the Russians operate when they're in charge. And you know what? People here are crystal clear about it. Russians are absolute masters at dragging out negotiations to inhuman extremes. They sit at the table, but they don't actually negotiate. They just let time pass, because time is on their side. The more Trump needs a political win, the more he'll be willing to concede, and in the end, what will the US president do? Admit that Putin doesn't respect him after claiming the opposite for years, and then dive into a major confrontation with Russia and China? Or will he simply walk away and say, "You're on your own"? Which, by the way, is exactly what they're already threatening to do. Remember the headline we showed you at the beginning of this video?
Donald Trump will abandon Ukraine peace talks in days without progress, warns Rubio.
And of course, this would be perfect for Moscow. Because here's the thing, in Russia, they're still convinced that without US support, Ukraine's resistance won't last long. That sooner or later, the European Union will get tired of the war and start saying it's time to stop. In fact, reports suggest that far from winding down, Russia may be preparing a new offensive. An offensive meant to wear down the last reserves of those of us who still believe the West can stop Putin from walking away victorious from this nightmare, with all the consequences that would bring. In other words, Putin has no reason to accept anything less than exactly what he wants. And even if he does accept something, it'll probably be weak and short-lived, like so many agreements in the past. Because if there's one thing we've seen loud and clear over the past few years, and especially in recent months, it's that Moscow has zero real interest in peace. If they truly wanted peace, their actions would have looked very different. Again, this is something Europe warned Trump about, but he wouldn't listen. Now, hold on, because despite all this, Trump may have done something that, maybe without realizing, might actually bring the end of this nightmare closer. Something that could push Putin, at least temporarily, into making concessions. What am I talking about? Stay tuned.
An unexpected leak.
The Russian strongman was probably seeing everything through rose-colored glasses when suddenly, wham, Trump stepped in. But not against Russia, against the rest of the world. And here's the issue. Donald Trump, with his chaotic decisions and reckless trade war, is slowing down the global economy, starting with the United States. Right now, more and more indicators are flashing warning signs of a looming recession. We've talked about this across all our channels here on VisualPolitik, but also on Visual Economic. And why is this a problem for Russia? Well, basically because fears of a global recession have tanked oil prices. And Russia lives off oil. The result?
Vladimir Putin's war chest under threat as oil prices slide.
Since 2020, the liquid portion of Russia's sovereign wealth fund has dropped by nearly 2/3. And now, with falling crude prices widening Russia's budget deficit, that fund may not even last a year. According to Benjamin Hilgenstock, head of macroeconomic research at the Kyiv School of Economics. And here's the twist. Trump's trade war isn't targeting Russia directly with tariffs, but it's hitting them hard anyway.
If trade wars continue, they generally lead to a global economic slowdown and potentially lower demand for our energy exports.
Think about it. 1/3 of Russia's entire government budget comes directly from oil and gas. And fears of a global downturn have dragged crude prices down. And with them, Urals oil, which is now trading at its lowest level in nearly 2 years. So if Moscow built its budget assuming nearly $70 per barrel, today it's hovering around $50.
This indicator is very important for us in terms of budget revenues. The situation is extremely volatile, tense, and emotionally charged.
But wait, this isn't even the worst part. Sanctions haven't crushed Russia, not entirely, because that wasn't the goal. The real aim was to cripple the country's long-term economic potential. And despite all the missteps, that goal is being achieved. Now, with oil prices falling, even temporarily, the situation could get worse. And we're not just saying that. Russia's own government confirms it in this report you're seeing on screen. This is the latest Strategic Energy Report, and the results couldn't be worse. The Russian government itself admits that oil fields discovered during the Soviet era are gradually being depleted. At the same time, they're not making the investments needed to launch new fields. Why? Because Russian oil companies are suffocating under high taxes, raised by Putin to fund the war, a lack of access to technology, and a shortage of international capital. As a result, this report, again from the Russian government, estimates that unless something changes soon, unless sanctions are lifted and massive investment returns, the Russian energy sector will collapse over the next 2 decades. At the current rate, oil production will be cut in half by 2050. And yeah, that might sound far off, but the problem is, production won't fall all at once. The decline will begin well before that. In other words, if Russia wants to avoid disaster, and don't forget, this is essentially a petrostate, it needs to end the war, free up resources to massively invest in the energy sector, and get those sanctions lifted. The problem, of course, is that all of that runs headfirst into Putin's grand plans. So the question is, will this red alert be enough to push the Kremlin to end this damned war? One thing's for sure, the collapse in oil prices is putting serious pressure on them. And if a global recession finally hits, the impact on Russia could be enormous. VisualPolitik community, that's where things stand. On the surface, it might seem like Putin has no need to end the war anytime soon, but the reality is, that choice could end up dooming the country's future. Then again, when has someone like Putin ever cared about that? When he's busy trying to go down in history as a new czar. We'll see how this story ends. One thing is clear, Russia's commitment to a real and lasting peace is, at best, questionable, and that's something we need to keep in mind. But now it's your turn. How do you think this will all end? Will Trump manage to push Putin to the negotiating table? Or is it Putin who's bending the US president to his will? Let us know what you think in the comments, and let's get this conversation going. And if you found this video interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe to VisualPolitik if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.